This is U.S. History Regents Review, Unit 4, and our final video. We're talking about the foreign policy of the presidents Roosevelt, Taft, and Wilson. So we just finished talking about Roosevelt's foreign policy, known as big stick diplomacy. He's going to enforce the Monroe Doctrine. He's going to use military power to get what we want. When Taft becomes president, he uses a different approach. It's called dollar diplomacy. So again, here's Roosevelt enforcing the Monroe Doctrine and keeping Europe out of the affairs of America. He's using his Great White Fleet to influence it. Taft is going to use more conservative methods, padding the big stick, making, Roosevelt's big stick a little softer. So instead of using all of our military force as influence, we should use money as influence. Because we have a lot of financial power, we should use it to get what we want by giving out loans to certain countries to influence Latin America. And then when Wilson becomes president, our third progressive president, he has ideas he calls the New Freedom, or we could call it moral diplomacy, where he believes the United States has to be a moral force, like a good force in the world. We should hold up the standard of what's right and good, and we should spread our democratic values. So remember, Wilson is an idealist. He has these beautiful ideas about what the world should be and what the government should do, and believes we have to be an example to the rest of the world. So here he is teaching about our values, things like values from our Constitution, Declaration of Independence, to our new acquisitions. So let's keep talking about Wilson's foreign policy. Because really the big thing you should associate with Wilson is World War I. He is the president during World War I. So remember, the United States had a policy in general, until imperialism, of isolationism. Really, our main goal is to stay out of foreign conflicts, like the ones that were constantly happening in Europe. And in Europe, war had broken out because of militarism, alliances, imperialism, nationalism, and the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand starts it all. So you wouldn't necessarily need to know why World War I started, but you would need to know why the United States decides to join. So why is that? Why do we go against our isolationism, which was Wilson's original goal? The main things to know are unrestricted submarine warfare. We want freedom of the seas. We had, as the United States, been sending supplies and trading with the Allies. We had been loaning them money and weapons, and a bunch of our ships were being attacked and sunk. We thought this was unfair because we were not officially at war. The Lusitania is a very famous example of one of these types of ships. It was a British ship, but many Americans died on it when a German U-boat submarine attacked it. We had made these large loans to the Allies, and frankly, we want our money back. We realized if they don't win, they won't be able to pay us back. The Zimmerman telegram that comes up on the Regents sometimes, this was a telegram that apparently was sent from Germany to Mexico, saying that if the United States joins the war, Mexico should invade the United States, and then Germany would help give back land to Mexico. So this is outrageous. The public finds out about this and gets very upset. And finally, the moral reason. Because remember, Wilson's an idealist. He says the world must be made safe for democracy. Let's look at his war message. He says, the present German submarine warfare against commerce is a warfare against mankind. We are now about to accept battle with this natural foe to liberty, Germany, and shall, if necessary, spend the whole force of the nation to check and nullify its pretensions and its power. We are glad to fight thus for the ultimate peace of the world and for the liberation of its peoples, the German peoples included, for the rights of nations great and small, and the privilege of men everywhere to choose their way of life and of obedience. The world must be made safe for democracy. So look at all those themes he had in there. He wants world peace. He wants people to be free. He wants people to have what's called self-determination, when you get to have a say over what kind of government you have, what your way of life is. And he wants democracy all around the world. He says, "We have no selfish ends to serve. We desire no conquest, no dominion. We seek no indemnities for ourselves, no material compensation for the sacrifices we shall freely make. We are but one of the champions of the rights of mankind. We shall be satisfied when those rights have been made as secure as the faith and freedoms of nations can make them." So he says, we are being totally selfless in this war. We don't want to gain anything. We just want the entire world to have rights. So this beautiful message, everyone loves it. And almost all of Congress does vote for war. Because remember, only Congress has the power to declare war. World War I, you're not going to be asked about specific battles or anything, but you should be aware that this was a new kind of war. It was horrific. There was trench warfare, miserable, horrible. Chemical weapons like mustard gas are being used. Tanks have been invented, machine guns, airplanes. All of these things increase the capacity to kill and maim. The exam is always going to ask you about the home front. How does the war change the United States at home? Well, first of all, war changes the economy. Whenever there is a war, the government always gets more involved in the economy. That's a big theme. The War Industries Board, for example, the government started to set prices. It tried to end labor disputes. It told what industries what they should make. Again, the government gets involved. And the government does everything it can to make sure people are supporting the war. So the Committee of Public Information is one part of the government that created propaganda. Propaganda plays on people's emotions to get them to join the war effort. For example, this is where Uncle Sam, I Want You, is created. The Espionage and Sedition Acts were passed, which made it illegal to interfere with the war effort and to criticize the government. Again, another theme. Remember the Alien and Sedition Acts? During wartime, you have fewer rights. And there's no better example than this very famous court case, Schenck versus United States. This guy, Schenck, had been distributing pamphlets telling people to resist the draft. He is arrested under the Espionage Act, and the Supreme Court decides, yeah, you're guilty. There are limits on your First Amendment right to freedom of speech when they create a clear and present danger. You can't yell fire in a crowded theater. You also can't do things that create a clear and present danger. There are limits on your rights, especially during a war. The Great Migration. Here's a map of it. This is a huge shift. African Americans move from the South up to northern cities because there are job opportunities available, and it's an opportunity to leave the South, where there was racial terror, violence, and Jim Crow laws. Women are starting to go to work. They're working in factories. They're getting involved by planting victory gardens. Remember, there's rationing. You're limited in what you can buy. So they want people to grow things in their backyards. And they want them to buy Liberty bonds. This is a way for the government to raise a lot of money really quickly. It's an IOU from the government. The war ends, and Wilson shows up. He wants to bring American ideals to Europe, create lasting peace. But Great Britain and France, all they're interested in is punishing Germany. Wilson's plan for the end of the war, he called the 14 points, which included ideas of self-determination and, most importantly, the League of Nations. He wanted countries to sit down and negotiate, prevent future war. So they do end up adding the League of Nations. That is part of the Treaty of Versailles. And when Wilson brings it home to Congress to sign off on, they don't do it because they do not want the United States to be pulled into another war, which they think the League of Nations could make them do. So we create the League of Nations. It's our idea, Wilson's idea, but we do not join it. The United States returns to its policy of isolationism. And we do not have success. The Treaty of Versailles fails. The League of Nations fails because of World War II.